not here to really teach because this is something that all of us already know a lot about, are already practicing in our day to day lives to a certain extent. And all we need to do is reinforce what we are doing and just add on a bit to it. So, just to give a short introduction of myself, my name is Dr. Vidhi Vora. I'm based out of Mumbai. I come with degrees in both dental sciences as well as environmental science. You must be wondering what is a doctor or a medico doing in the field of environment. One of the major reasons for me to enter into this area was basically I did not want to limit my work to just symptomatic treatment, but go beyond that, try and contribute to the human health and the health of the planet in a much bigger way. Is where I am now working as a circular economy consultant and coach. I'm also a founder of an organization called Green Phoenix Circular Solutions, where we work with corporates and institutions trying to upskill them and also guiding them as to how they can become more sustainable and become less impactful on the environment. I've been a heartfulness practitioner since 2009. My introduction was because of I reached the right age to start meditation. So that is how I got introduced into heartfulness. I hope all of you or some of you have been able to do the activity that I asked you to do. It is nothing very big or something. That is something like you can just give me impromptu answers as well if you've not been able to do the activity. I look forward to keeping this session as interactive as possible. I will request you to put some answers in the chat box. If that is not possible for you, you can always unmute and give an answer. Absolutely all right. You can just raise your hand or probably you can just unmute and give the answer. So let's begin. I hope I'm clearly audible and my screen is clearly visible to everyone.
Yes.
It's clear.
So
mobile and the pen.
If you could take the help of the chat box and just put in one or two environmental issues or any kind of issues that you are seeing in your surroundings or probably in your city or probably in the area that you are living, or probably like you've seen it somewhere you were traveling to, just one or two issues that you've been seeing. If you could just put it in the chat box or you can unmute and let me know.
Cutting of trees.
Yes, cutting of trees. Okay. I see plastic waste, food waste, use of single-use cutlery, either plastic or paper. Yes.
Yeah. While traveling in the train, the window is meant for it to throw all our garbages outside.
Outside, yeah. So we see a lot of littering
across
around.
India. Across
We see
India,
a
I'm
lot of
feeling that.
littering, yes.
Somewhere we have to give a direction for that to clean that one. I mean, not to do that one.
Yeah, there is no proper garbage segregation at the whole level.
Yeah. Yeah. Then Dipanshu has put degradation of wild areas for creating parks for development. Yes, there's a lot of destruction of natural areas that is happening. Drinking water quality is getting more poorer. There's a lot of plastic usage that has happened in the recent times. Every item that we use is having some plastic components in it. Solid waste management is not happening.
Exploitation of natural resources.
Yes. That is a very big issue. And that is something that we are really going to focus on today. Air pollution. Yes, air pollution is a major issue that we are facing. Unfortunately, air pollution does not get a lot of notice because it's invisible. You don't really see it. We talk a lot about water pollution because that is clearly visible, but air pollution is kind of like, you don't see it, but somewhere it is affecting you in some way or the other. The poor air quality is deteriorating your respiration capacity in some way or the other. Yes. Water wastage. Yes.
Shampoo sachets.
Yes. So you see, you've seen there is a lot of issues that we are seeing in our surroundings in relation to the environment. All of these issues are broadly classified currently into three main titles. So one is pollution, second is climate change, and third is biodiversity loss. So currently, this 3 point issue is called as the triple planetary crisis or the polycrisis. And these are the areas where the current work, when it comes to sustainability or when it comes to the groundwork that we need to do, needs to focus on. Like, for example, you said that air pollution. So, air pollution is contributing to both pollution as well as it is contributing to climate change. Then you said that there's a lot of destruction of natural areas that is happening. So that destruction is contributing to all of the three issues. We are seeing reduction in natural species. We are seeing extinction that is happening, both of flora and fauna. Then because of reduction of natural resources, we are seeing the rise in pollution levels, and somewhere there is that is contributing to climate change. So all of these issues are broadly classified into these three issues, which are not independent of each other, but they are very much interdependent with each other. And somewhere one is contributing to the aggravation of the other, something that we call as feedback. So because of the feedback of one of the issues, it is aggravating another issue. I will take, for example, climate change. Now, climate change is somewhere causing rise in temperature levels in certain areas. Currently, the major focus is oceans. Oceans have a certain temperature range in which the aquatic animals can survive. So, if the temperature goes above or beyond that, then the whole biological cycle of the aquatic animal gets affected, and somewhere it also affects the reproductive capacity of that animal or plant. And because of that, since the reproductive capacity gets impacted, there is a lot of loss of biodiversity that is happening under the water. You must have heard a lot about coral bleaching as well, where corals are turning white because they're losing out on their pigmentation because of the rising temperature levels in the ocean. So somewhere a lot of these issues are interconnected. What do you think, if you could just tell me one thing or put it in the chat box, are a major reason for these issues? You could just put one thing that you feel we as humans are doing wrong or contributing to causing these.
Use and throw.
Okay, use and throw, yes. Ignorance, too many desires, unawareness, insensitivity to the planet, yes. Consumerism, bang on. Industrial growth, yes. Unplanned, rampant industrial growth. Exploiting natural resources irrationally, yes. Slave of convenience. There is apathy, yes. We feel we are the boss of Earth and we own everything, yes. And the Earth is there only to cater to our needs and wants. Any more replies? Okay. Now, a lot of these uh, points that you put across are somewhere very much connected to how our industrial growth is happening, how our industries have been working since the time the industrial revolution happened, and also is very much dependent on the way we as individuals and as professionals. So whether we are working in an industry, whether we are working in the manufacturing unit, or as individuals are consuming things. So there is something known as a supply chain. So what is a supply chain? Supply chain is basically any material you use. For example, if you are using a mobile phone. Now for a mobile phone to reach you, it has to go through various steps in its life cycle. Like how each one of us have a life cycle from birth to death. Similarly, every product that we use, any material that we use, whether it's clothes, electronics, whether the food we consume, or accessories that we use, the airplanes we travel in, or the motor vehicles that we use, every product that we are currently using has something known as a life cycle that starts with what is known as raw material extraction, where the resources, the natural resources, are extracted from planet Earth, and it ends at what is known as an end of life. So currently, the major issue that we face with respect to the supply chain is that it is very much linear. Now, what do I mean by very much linear is that any product that we are using, because of the industrialization and the way our supply chains have been set, we are extracting a lot of natural resources from the environment, converting it into products that we make use of, whether it is natural or synthetic, making use of it, and then discarding it without considering the value that that product still holds. Now, here I will give you an example. Again, I'll take an example of the electronic that you are using currently to stream into this meeting. Now, I am using a laptop. Some of us are using cell phones. So basically, if you want a cell phone or a laptop to be created, first of all, we need to mine for a lot of raw materials. And raw materials extending from a lot of rare earth metals, whether it is cobalt, whether it is copper, whether it is lithium, uh, gold, silver. Then there is the plastic component that is there in our electronics, which comes from the fossil fuels or from the oils that are removed from under the sea or from under the ground. So all of these raw materials are being extracted, they are being collected by the producers of these, the components of the electronic. So there will be someone who will be creating only the battery of the laptop or cell phone. There will be someone who will be creating just the body. Then there is some producer who will be creating something known as the motherboard. So all of the different components are then created, and then they are brought together to create this product that you're making use of. It is packaged well so that it does not get damaged, and then through various streams of transportation, whether it's airways, railways, waterways, it reaches the end consumer. The consumer is you and me and each one of us who is making use of these electronics. Now, what happens once we've taken the electronic and we've used it for some time? Quite often we see that, okay, especially when it comes to cell phone. Now, recently the iPhone 15 came. What happened? A lot of people went and bought it. Not because their phone was not working well, but just because there is this desire that, okay, a new model has come, we need to have it, we need to make use of it. So I went and bought it. What happened to the older model? Some people might have exchanged it. Some people might have put it into something known as e-waste. Now, when you put any product that you have used into e-waste, maybe that product might not be working is why you are putting it, or some other reason. But there is something very important that we need to think over here is maybe that product has lost its value or lost its purpose. But do you think the materials that have gone into making that product has lost its value? Do you think the metals, the rare earth metals, the plastic body has lost its value when you are throwing it into the dustbin? Absolutely not. They are still serving the purpose that they were designed for. And unfortunately, because of this linear supply chain that we have been following, all of this value that the materials of products hold, it gets discarded probably in the form of landfill. We throw it into the landfill, or it gets discarded into oceans. We see a lot of plastic pollution in the oceans where single-use plastic is there, or we see it in waterways, we see it in soil, or probably somewhere it is contributing to air pollution of some kind. So the most basic issue currently that we are contributing to all of these issues of whether it is pollution, whether it is degradation, whether it is deforestation, Because every time we need to create a product, we are having to mine. Every time we are mining, we are destroying more and more natural landscape. Every time we need to create paper which is being created by wood, you need to cut your trees. Every time we want to do a construction, we are removing the natural area, trees that are there along the side of the roads, maybe. So every time any kind of consumption or any kind of production or any kind of development that is currently happening, on one side, we are losing out on our natural resources. And whatever natural resources that we are consuming, we are not returning it back to the environment, number one. And number two, it is ending up in piles of waste on land and in water. And this is the waste that is contributing to major issues in the environment. Whether it is the littering that we see, whether we see deforestation, whether we see biodiversity loss, whether we see toxic pollution. So now imagine, a lot of these electronic products have certain lead, certain toxic metals that are there. And imagine if they are lying, even plastic has a lot of toxic particles in it. And imagine that it is lying in the sun, degrading in the sun, and all of those toxins are leaching into the soil and slowly reaching the water body from where we consume our water. Indirectly, directly or indirectly, all of these toxins, all of these pollutants are reaching us somewhere. We hear a lot about microplastics. So somewhere, this is the narrative that needs to be changed, that whatever we are consuming, are we able to keep it in consumption for as long as possible? Are we able to hold the materials at its highest value as long as possible, so that there is a multi-pronged advantage to this? Moving on, we will see how this works. And so we will be now looking at what is known as the 9R framework for a circular economy. Before I go on to the topic, I had asked you all to do an activity where I had asked you to choose one item that you use on a regular basis and one item that you're not using on a very regular basis. If you could just unmute and let me know what was that each of these items and what was the approximate cost that each one holds, and also, or probably you can put it in the chat box. Yes, Bhagyashri.
Yeah, the thing that I use very often is the kitchen knife. Every day I use it. The one that I use rarely is my saris.
Okay.
And the cost, the knife.
Just give me an approximate cost.
Yeah, so the knife costs, say, somewhere between 100 to 150 rupees.
Okay.
And the saris are around 5K, 5K, 1K to 5K.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else? You can just give an impromptu answer as well. Okay. Mobile is being used regularly and pen is being used irregularly. Okay. Yeah, we've come into the age of digitization now. Okay, mobile and books. Okay. I daily use books and rarely the formal dresses. Okay. So all of these items that we've been using, as Sister Bhagyashri mentioned, that she uses knife on a daily basis and she uses saris rarely. There is a certain cost that we've paid to buy those products. Some of it is being used in a regular way, so you have somewhere done justice to the amount you paid and it is being used. Quite often what happens is we tend to buy products which just lie around. We are not using it on a regular basis. It's somewhere losing its purpose value, but the material that has gone into it is not losing its value. But what is the catch over here is that the cost that you paid, the MRP that you paid, unfortunately does not account for the resources that have actually gone into making that product, nor does it account for the environmental costs that are associated with it when it was being produced. And also, if you are throwing it away, what is the damage that it is causing to the environment? I will take the example of clothes. Clothes is something that all of us use very frequently. We like to shop on a regular basis. Every season, there are people who like to buy new clothes, not just out of necessity, but because of a liking that we have. Now, clothes, for example, currently we see a mix of textiles that is being used. We see a lot of natural fiber and we see a lot of synthetic fiber that is being used. Now, we'll take an example of a cotton t-shirt. Now, for the cotton t-shirt to be produced, as we saw the linear supply chain from raw material extraction till end of life, there is a lot of costs that are not being considered that are associated with it, which unfortunately is not a part of the MRP that we pay. For example, for a cotton t-shirt to be created, we first need to have cotton crops. Then we need water, we need dyes, we need probably buttons to be created. So each of this part of your product or the cotton t-shirt has some raw material that is getting extracted. A lot of time, this raw material extraction or creation, cotton being a water intensive crop, so there's a lot of water usage that is going into it. When it comes to the processing part of it, when the yarn is being created, when the thread is being created, again there is a lot of resources that are going into it. What is like water, energy, manpower. And again, there are a lot of chemicals that are released when these products are created, which end up into the environment and which, if not treated properly, are again polluting the environment. Then the packaging that goes with it. Quite often, if you see men's shirts, there are so many parts that are there in the packaging, like, almost like, you'll see 20 to 25 items that are there in the shirt, right from the outer plastic packaging. Then there is that cardboard that is there. Then there are those clips that are there. So there are so many things that are going into the packaging of each product, which eventually, when it comes in our hand, what we do? We remove it, we discard it. What is happening to those materials? Is it ending up in a landfill somewhere? Is it getting recycled? We don't know about that. So that is also somewhere adding to the cost that this product is having on the environment. Similarly, once you are done with the t-shirt or cloth or whatever it is, still in our Indian culture, we have that habit that we will make use of it as much as possible. Probably that t-shirt will become a rag cloth, it will become like a cleaning cloth. And unless it's absolutely not usable, we don't usually discard it. Or at the most, we believe in donation. We don't like to throw these things. But eventually, it reaches a point where reaches that it can no more be used, is when we tend to discard it. Now, when we are discarding it, is it really getting recycled, or is it ending up in the landfill? And when that happens, again, there is a cost that the environment pays in the form of pollution, microplastics, textile fibers entering into waterways, etc., etc. So currently, as we saw, that the knife was what, 150 rupees. That 150 rupees knife is not really compensating for all of the costs that were involved along the supply chain of that product. And that is where somewhere something known as the circular economy needs to come into picture, because the material that is going into creating that product and whatever resources that are being consumed for the product to be created need to hold their value somewhere. And that is only possible when we start thinking of altering the way our current supply chains or how our materials are getting used. So, uh, can someone tell me about some natural cycles that are there in nature? apart from what is there on the screen. I put a water cycle, and then there is the life cycle of a butterfly. If you could let me know about some other natural cycles that are there currently in the environment.
Seasons.
Yeah, seasons.
Birth and death of human.
Yes, yes. Day and night. Yes.
The,
Yeah,
cir- the circadian cycle.
circadian cycle. Yes. Monica had raised her hand. Plant life. Yes. Human life cycle. So there are a lot of cycles that are there in the natural environment, in nature, whether you call it like, whether it's the human life cycle, whether it's day and night, whether it's the carbon cycle. So photosynthesis is a part of the carbon cycle. Then whether it is the food webs. So if you see in nature, everything is a cycle. You will never find something that is linear in nature. For example, I will take example of the carbon cycle. So carbon cycle is basically associated to the food. We'll take the example of the food web. Now plants tap the energy from sun. They absorb the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and they create nutrients. Now plant is eaten by the most basic herbivore. So for example, if the plant is being eaten by a rabbit, now the rabbit is being eaten by a carnivore, say for example, a tiger. The tiger somewhere reaches its end of life and it dies. As it dies, the scavengers that are there, the vultures or the eagles, they will feed on the tiger. The vultures and eagles will also reach their end of life and they will die. Once they die, they get degraded. The bacteria and the microbia that are there in the soil of the environment, they work as decomposers. They naturally decompose the body of the vulture and convert all of that matter into nutrient for the soil, and that again returns back into the plant, where the plant takes all of those nutrients from the soil. So if you look at this cycle is a circular cycle where probably every plant every at every stage, probably the waste that was there, so waste or that creature was acting as a resource for the next stage, and there was no wastage that was getting created, and the cycles keep on continuing infinite number of times without any point where the resource is getting scarce, or on the other side it is either polluting the environment. Similarly, if you look at the water cycle also, water gets evaporated from water bodies, lakes, oceans. They leave the atmosphere. They get converted to clouds, comes down in the form of rain, goes back into the lakes, and again it keeps on continuing infinite times. And why is this? Because of this circular nature, the earth has existed for so many billions of years, because the way it has been designed, the way these cycles have been designed are absolutely circular, where at no stage there is any waste that is getting generated in the natural environment. So the very basic concept of a circular economy has been adopted from the natural cycles that exist in nature, which is this is how it looks like, where the concept that we've taken is that right from the time we are extracting the raw materials from the environment and we are ending up till the end of life of that product, there is no waste that is getting generated, and at every stage it is contributing to the next step of the supply chain, and the cycle keeps on continuing as many times as possible, as many times the material can hold value till its end of life. You must be wondering, how is this possible? Because for this, we need to have um, designs in such a way where that material can be, like, retrieved at the end of end of life, and brought back into the supply chain. So that is where the major focus is, the designing of products to become more circular, so that we are able to contribute to the stage of becoming a circular economy or a circular supply chain, where materials that are extracted, the raw material that is getting extracted, undergoes the whole processing, gets converted into a product, it's distributed to the consumer makes use of it, tries to extend its life as much as possible through reusing it and repairing it. Once it reaches a point where it is no more possible to do that, it gets collected in a way where it can be segregated, where it can be either recycled or used in a way for that we will be seeing in the 9R framework. And then through all of these mechanisms, it is returning back into the supply chain in the form of raw materials, and again getting converted into that product or an alternative product, where we are neither dependent on more raw materials from the environment, and we are neither discarding that material or that product into the environment, which ends up into waste. I hope you all are with me till now. Any queries, any questions? If you have, I would love to take them. You can put them into the chat box. I will try to take them at the end of this session. But I hope everybody is with me till now.
Yes. Good, good.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, very nice.
So now,
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
this is just basic overview that I want to give, that what are the main principles of the circular economy. As I said, number one is try to circulate the products and materials at their highest value for the longest period of time. So whatever natural resources we are taking from the environment, we keep them in use as long as possible. And since we keep them in use as long as possible, we will be eliminating the waste that is getting generated, preventing the pollution that gets generated because of the waste. And in that way, we are also regenerating nature. Because number one, we are not dependent on more virgin materials from the environment. So whatever natural and resources that are there will exist. We will not be destroying them. We will not be compromising on those. And on the other side, because we are not contributing to pollution or to any of the negative environmental impacts, the nature can thrive as long as possible. But for us to think about circular economy, this is the most basic framework that we can follow, not just at an individual level, but this is something now businesses are also looking to incorporate into their supply chains, into their working, and trying to make that transition towards becoming more and more circular, so that they are not dependent on more raw materials. Because again, natural resources are limited. We do not have infinite natural resources in the environment that we can keep on exploiting. And we are also seeing a lot of negative environmental impacts that are there because of the linear way of consumption. So the 9R framework extends from something known as R0, that is refuse, till something known as R9, that is recovery. So we've heard a lot about reduce, reuse, and recycle till now. Like 3Rs have been a lot of times used, and it is also a part of the way the Indian culture has always been. We've always believed in these 3Rs. But now we need to go beyond these 3Rs. These 3Rs are included in this 9R framework, but there are more components now which will really help us to follow the circular economy, to contribute to the circularity. Has someone said anything? Okay, I will have a look at this later. So the first is something known as R0, which is refuse. Now, why is it R0? Because here in the 9R framework, we are also speaking from the commercial point of view, also speaking from manufacturing point of view, also speaking from the business point of view. So it has been given the number R0 because refuse is something that is not really contributing to the profitability of businesses. But at an individual level and also at a business level, there are certain ways where we can refuse materials and products that are not really helping us in any way and are not contributing to the environment in a better way by replacing that with a more environmentally conscious product. For example, someone put in the chat that we are using a lot of single-use cutlery, both plastic and paper, which is contributing to single-use plastic pollution and also consuming more and more resources every time we use it one time. Like now, if you see, here I will also go back to the linear supply chain that I spoke about, where we saw that raw materials were extracted, processed, packaged, brought to the consumer, and reached its end of life. Imagine the amount of resources that were consumed at every stage, the amount of impacts that it created for you to just use that product once and discard it. Now we need to go beyond this single use mindset and make use of products as much as possible. So it is better to refuse single use items and make use of products that can be used as long as possible. So that is the R0. Next is R1, which is rethink, where we need to rethink about our needs versus our wants. Any product that we are buying or any business is looking to pick up the raw material, is there some alternative that is available? Do we really need that product? Is it contributing to the benefit of us as well as the environment? So rethink is usually the first step that is there for organizations to think about, that any product that they are making use of or creating, whether it is that product in itself or whether it is the packaging that that product comes in, is there somewhere where we can make use of materials that are less polluting, that are more sustainable, where they will not be more detrimental to the environment, where it will not be detrimental to the health of the people living in areas where there is a lot of pollution, or not, even not detrimental to the employees handling those materials, is what is the first step that comes when we are thinking about circularity. Next, something known as reduce. Now we see a lot of Amazon packages and a lot of online shopping that is happening. And quite often you must have seen that a very small product is being sent in a huge packaging, which is actually contributing to more waste generation, because we don't really need such a huge packaging for such a small product. If you can see in this, a small product is being sent in huge packaging boxes where a lot of the resources are getting unnecessarily consumed. And quite often, some of these packages are not even recyclable. They cannot be recycled. They get discarded, end up in landfill, causing pollution. So we need to reduce our consumption of resources as much as possible, trying to make products which are way more efficient, reducing the unnecessary consumption of resources need to reduce. So that is the next step when it comes to trying to become more and more circular. Now, this also applies to the energy consumption that we have at home, whether it is the appliances that we are using. We need to look for more energy efficient appliances. Now, you must have known how our Honorable Prime Minister promoted the LEDs, because the LEDs are more energy efficient compared to our age-old fluorescent bulbs that we used to use in the past, and also to the normal tube lights and to an extent to CFL bulbs as well. So trying to become more and more energy efficient by reducing our consumption of products which are not helping uh, reduce our energy needs, and you making use of products that are more energy efficient. Also using products that have a good energy star rating. You must have seen it in your refrigerators. There are energy star ratings that are there. In air conditioners, there are energy star rating. So making use of such products which have good energy star rating will also help you reduce your energy consumption and eventually the bills that you pay for electricity as well. And when it comes to organizations, they need to start designing products where they are making minimal use of more and more resources, trying to make the processes also more efficient. Then comes the reuse. So reduce and reuse was also a part of our 3 Rs, and they've been just picked up over here as well. So reuse is in the form of making use of different products that we consume till as much and as many times as we can. You will see a few examples here where we preferring to use a reusable bag for grocery shopping rather than the single-use plastic bags that are given by the vegetable vendors, making use of drums for different purposes. So reuse can be in different ways. Reuse can be probably reusing your clothes, or contributing to the reuse of clothes by donating them, or buying things second hand. So again, that product that we've used, we are extending its life and not letting it end to waste. By extending the life of that product, we're keeping it in use as much as possible and reducing the earlier that it reaches to waste. So reuse is also a very important component of the 9R framework. Then something known as repair. Now we've seen our parents and our grandparents who believed in a lot of repair, and we still have a lot of repair shops that we see in and around in our markets, whether it is mobile repair shops, we see the cobblers repairing footwear, we see tailors repairing our clothes. So repair is also a very important part of extending the life of products and making your cycle more circular. Because any product, for example, I have a shirt uh, and my button has broken. Now, if I just repair it, or probably there's a slight tear, and I just repair that, I am extending the use of that shirt rather than discarding it or throwing it. So somewhere you are reducing the waste that is getting generated. So till now we saw R0 to R4. First, we refused. So we are refusing any of those materials that are easily contributing to waste. So that is our first step towards becoming more circular, becoming more zero waste. The next was rethink. In rethink, what we thought of, you choosing products that are more eco-friendly, that have more sustainable, that are better options to what we use that might be contributing to a polluting the environment. After that, we looked at reduce. So reducing those materials which are not really needed, which can be avoided as much as possible. Also reducing, trying to reduce packaging. So this is something which organizations need to think about. It's not just from the personal point of view. Uh, then we came to reuse. So reusing the product as much as possible so that it does not end up into waste. Repairing products so that again we are not throwing it. So for example, your mixie jar has got spoiled or your blender has got spoiled. We repair it so that we are able to use more and more of it. If we do not repair it and we discard it, then that material becomes waste. All the components that are there in that, whatever important resources went into making that mixie jar or blender or oven or anything, all of that is becoming waste. Then the next step is something known as refurbish. Now refurbish, till now, like till repair, whatever it was something that we could do at an individual level and at a consumer level. Now, beyond this, whatever are the steps, it's more like an industrial level or an organizational level steps, where refurbish is uh, products that are being created are being designed in such a way that certain components are being changed in that, and that product becomes good as new. Now, for example, if you look at these chest of drawers, all that has been done is probably the paint was changed, the handles were changed a little, and if there were any areas where there was any broken, it was repaired and it got refurbished. And so instead of this chest of drawers going into waste, it is being reused for a longer period of time, and we are reducing the wastage that is created. Similarly, when it comes to electronics as well, certain components that are there in, like, a cell phone that you use, probably the motherboard has stopped working, but all of the other components are in good shape. Probably the organization takes it back, refurbishes it, and puts it back into the supply chain, so that we are not wasting all of the other components just for that motherboard getting spoiled. Similarly, that same thing is possible for bigger electronics as well. So this is where the designing part comes into picture, where organizations need to start thinking from the design point of view, how they can make their products in such a way that even with a bit of refurbishment, that product is not thrown and it is being used as long as possible. One of the best examples for refurbish is also the renovations that we get done in our house. We don't change our house every time there is an issue, right? We get some amount of renovation done. If there is some seepage, we try to control that seepage. If there is some probably tile breakage that happened, we just repair that tile, replace that tile. If there is some ceiling issue, then we just replace that. Or we keep on renovating our houses in some ways or the other. Probably we put a fresh coat of paint. So this is where we are refurbishing the space that we are living in, so that we are not consuming more and more resources. Next is something known as remanufacture. So in remanufacture, any product that is not in a working condition but has certain items that are still in working condition, those items are retrieved back and they are put into a newer product which has the same purpose. So for example, a laptop has a lot of products, a lot of components in it. So maybe some components are not working, maybe the screen stopped working, maybe the battery is not working, but all of the other components are still in a working condition. So in a remanufacture, what the organization can do is take all of those components and put it in a new laptop. Priyanka, you want to say something?
Yeah. May I suggest that Vidhi, you're on the flow, please finish it and then take up the questions.
Sure. I'm almost done. So, take some of the products, components that are in good working condition and put it into a new laptop. Probably the body can be changed, give it a new fresh look, but the components that were there in the previous laptop, which were in good working condition, is being reused into this new product, which is the same product. Like, a laptop is being converted into a laptop itself, only replacing those items which were not working in the previous product. And so we are again reducing the overall wastage that could have got created if the whole laptop was discarded or put into e-waste. Then next is something known as repurpose. So repurpose is very much like what we called as upcycling, where we tend to do a lot of upcycling even at home. Like, we especially when it comes to textiles, like, we convert, there are people who convert their jeans into bags or pouches, or probably rugs or towels into rugs and stuff like that. So the repurpose is basically any product that was used and discarded because it's reached its end of life. We are converting it into a different product, but still making use of those materials that were there in the previous product. So again, you are reducing the wastage that could have got created if you directly discarded that product. Then the R8 is recycle. Now, if you saw in the previous R's, what was there? Reduce, reuse, recycle. Now, when we come to recycle, we are going through a lot of steps before we are actually thinking of recycling the products that we use on a day-to-day life. We started from refuse, where we refused things that are of no value, that are contributing to the pollution. We thought of rethinking the type of materials and products that we are using. We are trying to reduce our consumption. We are trying to reuse products as much as possible. After that, we are trying to repair if the product has become faulty, so that we are extending its life. Beyond that, then we are looking for organizations to help us with the refurbish, remanufacture, and repurpose, so that whatever material was there is getting the life of that product or the life of the materials is getting extended, and we are not putting it into waste. And then only when all of these steps are not possible is when one must think about recycle. Why? Because recycle is again a resource intensive process, requires a lot of work that needs to be done even before it goes into recycling. And one of the biggest tasks over here is segregation. Segregation is a big task that needs to be done at source, at our level. But even after we segregate it, once it goes to the recycling handler or the waste handler, they also have a major task of recycling, of segregating the materials that we have given to them. For this, I will take the example of plastics. Plastics come in different types. There are almost 7 different types of plastics that are used on a day-to-day basis. And each of these plastic have its own properties, and not all plastics are recyclable. So even if we are segregating our paper waste, our plastic waste, our wet waste, even if we are giving that plastic waste to the waste handler, they need to further segregate into different type of plastics. And somewhere the contamination that can happen to that material also needs to be taken care of, because if a plastic material is contaminated, it cannot be recycled. So recycle is quite a very resource intensive process, requires a lot of work that needs to be there. And again, the whole processing of recycling does contribute to some issues. Like for example, in plastics, it also contributes to microplastic generation. And sometimes it is very difficult to actually recycle products. Recycling textiles is again another challenge that organizations face because of the kind of material it comes with. We use a lot of hybrid materials in textiles, whether it's a mixture of natural and synthetic, and it is not possible to segregate these two materials. And so recycling that is again a challenge. So only when we have navigated from R0 to R7, when we are not able to fulfill all of those steps, is when we think of recycling. And even if, and after recycle, there is something known as recover, where products which could not be even recycled are then converted into energy creation products, where they are either incinerated or something known as waste to energy is made use of, so that at least that material is get contributing in some way to our energy needs and not ending up as waste in the landfill. So we saw the whole 9R framework. We understood a bit about circularity. The 9R framework is the basis of how circularity can be brought about. And as I mentioned when I was explaining the circular supply chain, that design plays a very important role when it comes to trying to bringing in circularity. And that is where the major intervention needs to happen in the next few years from the industrial point of view. But till that happens, we at an individual level can also contribute to becoming more zero waste, reduce our waste generation, becoming more and more circular by following some of the steps that are there in the 9R framework. So I will just end my session by this quote, that eliminate the very concept of waste, do not reduce, minimize, or avoid, but eliminate the very concept by design. That is our ultimate destination. But before that, we can make use of the 9R framework to reach circularity and to become more and more zero waste. So this is where I end my session. We can take questions now if we have time.